Check, check.
Just one at a time, people. Just one at a time. Can you hold on to that one? I could do one at a time. I got this one in my hand, okay? You done with that book? I gave my watch to Ema, because Ema's not wearing the watch. Okay. What week we singing songs, not Tessa? We singing songs? Which songs? Is there a song about frogs? How does it go? Frogs here, frogs there, frogs are jumping everywhere. One evening when Hera woke up in his bed, there were frogs on his head and frogs on his bed, frogs on his nose and frogs on his toes. Frogs here, frogs there, frogs were jumping. Ooh, got third step. What's that? Social hall. Okay. Okay. Mm-hmm. You can go to the social hall. No, you can already go to the social hall. What? You want to go to the social hall? All right, let's do it. Really? Okay.
Do you think the lights need to be on or does it not matter? No. Good go. Hmm? לפני בוא יום השם
הנה אנוכי שולח לכם את אליהו הנביא לפני בואו יום השם הגדול והנורא. לבבות רבנים ורבנים ראשים לבבות רבנים. Shabbat Shalom, Boker Tov. Thanks for joining me. You'll notice that I am not wearing a mask, and you will see throughout the service that there are not other people in the sanctuary today. We did not get required number of signups for us to be able to have people in here. So I'll just say that if you're interested in coming in person, please sign up so that we can daven with other people in person, so that those of you that are at home can have a minyan with us in person. But for today and for the next 2 days of Yontif, I'll be here leading the service, and I hope that you'll continue to join us tomorrow and Monday. We'll begin this morning with Ma Tovu, page 101. Ma Tovu, Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael. Ma Tovu, Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael. We'll turn to page 103 for Birkot HaShachar, the morning blessings. I'll invite you to rise if you're able to do so. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lasech vivin al havchin ben yom uvein laila. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asani betzalmo. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asani bat chorin. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, pokeach ivrim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, mabish arumim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, matir asurim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, zokef kefufim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, rokah haaretz al hamayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamechin mitzadei gaver. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asa li kol tzorki. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, ozer Yisrael bigvura. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, oter Yisrael betifara. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hanoten le'ayef koach. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, ha'ma'avir shana menat b'nei me'afatai v'hira tzal me'avanecha. Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei avoteinu she'taglim. Utneinu hayom uv'chol yom lecheinu chesed l'rachamim beinecha v'neichol roeinu v'tigmalenu chasadim tovim. Baruch atah Adonai gomel chasadim tovim le'amo Yisrael. You can be seated. We turn to 112 for the Psalm for Shabbat. Hayom yom Shabbat kodesh shebo hayu haleviim omrim b'veit hamikdash mizmor shir Le'yom HaShabbat, tov lahodot l'Adonai, u'zamer l'shimcha l'yom lahagid b'boker chastecha, ve'emunatcha b'leilot alei asar v'leilot. Tzadik ata amar yifrach, ke'erez b'levanon, Yizkashatolim beveit Adonai bechatzrot Eloheinu yafrichu od yanovun beseva deshenim vera'ananim yehiyu lehagid ki asher Adonai tzurim v'lo avla tabo. Page 120. Mizmor shir Chanukat habayit leDavid arum Adonai kedili tani v'lo simach toy v'li Adonai. Hafachta mispari l'macholi, pitachta saki v'tazreni simcha, l'man yazamercha chavod v'la'idam, Adonai Elohai le'olam odeka. We'll rise for Baruch She'amar, page 122. Baruch She'amar v'haya ha'olam, Baruch Hu, Baruch Hosev v'reshit, Baruch Shemo, Baruch Omer ve'oseh, Baruch Hu, Baruch Gozer u'mekayem, Baruch Shemo, Baruch Merachem al haaretz, Baruch Hu, Baruch Merachem al haberiot, Baruch Shemo, Baruch Mishalem Sachar Tov Lireyav, Baruch Hu, Baruch Chayla V'Kayam La'Netzach, Baruch Shemo, Baruch Poda U'Masil, Baruch Hu, Baruch Shemo, Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam. Yachin Chai Olamim, Melech Meshubach Umfoar, Adei Ad Shemo Gadol, Baruch Atah Adonai, Melech Mula Batish Bachot. You can be seated, top of 123. Hodu LaDonai, Kiru Vishmo, Hodiu Vami Malilotav, Shirulo, Zamrulo, Sichu, Bachol Miflotav, Hitalo Vashem Koshai Sponsor, Shavana Vazova Shofan, Bomtam Nizbanem. Ki gadol Adonai hu al me'or v'norahu al kol Elohim, ki kol Elohei ha'amim elilim, v'Adonai shamayim asa, hod v'hadar lefanav. Oz v'chavav bimkomo. Ramemu Adonai Eloheinu v'hishtachavu lahadom raglav kadoshu. Ramemu Adonai Eloheinu v'hishtachavu lahar kodsho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu ve'hu rachum yechaper avon ve'lo yashchit v'hirba lahashiva po ve'lo ya'ir kol chamato atadon tichlarcha mecha mimeni chastecha v'amircha tamid etzurni zachorecha mecha. Adonai Tzevaot, Ashrei Adam Boteach Bach, Adonai Hoshia, Melech Yanenu, Ve'yom Koreinu, Hoshia et Amecha, Uvarech et Nachalatecha, Urein Banasayim Adonai, Mishenech Yiktal Adonai. Va'ani b'chastecha v'atachti, Ageli b'vishuatecha, Shir Adonai, Ki gamal alai. We'll turn to Ashrei, page 136. Page 136. Ashrei yoshvei veitecha, od yehalilu chasela. Ashrei ha'am shekacha lo, Ashrei ha'am shadonai Elohav, tehila le David mimcha le'melech baruch Hashem. Tehilat Adonai yedaber pi v'yivarech kol basar shem kodsho le'olam va'ed v'anachnu nevarech ya me'ata v'yad olam. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah nafshi et Adonai, hallelujah b'chazar melo ha'baldi al tiftachu minim b'ven adam she'ein lo teshua. Tetzei rucho yeshuv la'admato b'yom ha'adonai. Adonai shomer et geirim, yatam ba'amana yoded, v'derech r'shaim ya'avet. Yimloch Adonai le'olam, Elohayach Tzion, l'dor v'dor. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Ki tov zamra Eloheinu, ki na'im nava tehila b'nai Yerushalayim Adonai. Nidche Yisrael yechanes harfel shalom. Natan lifnei malach malifnei or basher yikra lo v'rasiz mumlan havat Adonai derben amamah. Shabbat Yerushalayim et Adonai hallelujah Elohai king of the prayer where Magin devarav leYaakov chukav u'mishpatav leYisrael lo asachem lechol goy u'mishpatim b'yadom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah et Adonai min hashamayim, hallelujah b'mromim, hallelujah chol melachav, hallelujah kotzavav, hallelujah shemesh v'yarech, hallelujah kol kochvei, hallelujah shemesh v'amayim asher me'alei shemayim, Yahweh et Shem Adonai kutzivav v'nimrav v'yamin elachok natan v'lo yavor, hallelujah Adonai min ha'tztanim v'lo eshavar jaglu Vayarem Karen La'amo, Tehillah L'chol Chasidav, Livnei Yisrael Kirovo. Hallelujah. 140. Hallelujah. Shir L'Adonai, Shir Chadash, Tehilato B'kal Chasidim Yismach Yisrael Bo Savanetzi Negil B'makam. Yahalu Shmo V'makom V'tach V'chinor, Yizamar Lo Kirot Adonai B'ma Yifer Nabim Yisrael L'Zazim. Lesor machem bezikim, v'nichberem bechavlei varzel, lasot b'mishpat katuv, v'adar l'chol chasidav. Hallelujah. Hallelujah, 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 el bekodsho. Hallelujah, hallelujah, berkia uzo. Hallelujah, 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 v'gborotav. Hallelujah, hallelujah, kerov good love. Hallelujah, 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 b'tei shofar. Hallelujah, hallelujah, b'nevel v'chinor. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah, b'tof u'machom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, b'minim ve'ugav. Hallelujah, 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 v'tziat alei shama. Hallelujah, hallelujah, b'tziat alei teruah. Kol haneshama tehallel, hallelujah, hallelujah. Kol haneshama tehallel, hallelujah. Kol haneshama tehallel, hallelujah. Baruch Adonai le'olam, amen v'amen. Baruch Adonai mitzvah, shachan Yerushalayim, aliyah, Baruch Adonai Baruch Shem kavodo le'olam, v'yimalech v'ro kol ha'aretz, amen v'amen. We rise 142. V'yivarech David, et Adonai l'nei kol kahal, v'yomer David, Baruch et Adonai le'Yisrael avinu me'olam ha'olam, v'chadonai gdula v'gvur v'adabim nezakim, v'shamayim v'chadonai והאושר והכבוד מלפניך ואתה משה בכל ויך כוח וגבורה ובידך לגדל חזק לכל ואתה למנו אתה הוא אדוני אלוהים אשר בחרת באברהם והוצאתו מאור כשדים ושמת שמו אברהם, ומצאת את לבבו, נאמן לפניך, וחרוץ עמו הברית, לתת את ארץ הכנעני, החיתי האמורי והפריזי והיבוסי והגרגשית לתת לזרעו, ותקם את אברך כי צדיק אתה ותרתני והים בקעת לפניהם, ויעברו בתוך הים ביבשה, ואת רדפיהם ישלח צבים צלות, כמו אבן במים עזים. 143. ויושע אדוני ביום ההוא את ישראל מיד מצרים, וירא ישראל מצרים את שפת וירא ישראל את היד הגדולה אשר עשה אדוני במצרים, ויראו העם את אדוני, ויאמינו באדוני ובמשה עבדו. אז ישיר משה ובני ישראל את השיר הזאת לאדוני, ואמרו לאמור, אשר לנו כי גאו גס וסברך בו רמה ויעמוד עמהם. אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ותיקח מרים הנביאה, אחות אהרון את התוף בידה, ותצאנה כל הנשים אחריה בתופים ובמחולות, ותן להם מרים, שיר לאדוני כי גאו גאס וסברך בו רמה וים. כי לאדוני מלוכה מושל בגויים, ועלו מושים בהר ציון לשפוט את הריסה, והייתה לאדוני מלוכה, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביומו יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד. You can be seated. We continue with Nishmat, page 145. נשמת כל חי, תברך את שמך אדוני אלוהינו, ברוך כל בשר תפארת זכרך מגנה. ולא ישן אילופינו מלא שירה קיימות, שנראה כמון גלה ושפתנו שבת כמרחבי רכבת. ועדינו ברזו כנשי שמי ברלנו כלות כאיילות איננו כל עצמותי תמר דנמי חמך אני מחזק ממני מי מלך ומי שפלך ומי ארוך לך, האל הגדול הגיבור והנורא אלוהיון קונה שמיים וארץ, נהללך ונשבחך ונפארך ונברך את שם קודשך, כאמור לדוד ברכי נפשי את אדוני וכל קרב את שם קודשו. האל בתעצומות עוזך, הגדול בכבוד שמך, הגיבור לנצח והנורא בנורותיך, המלך היושב על כיסא רם ונישא. This concludes Pesukei de Zimra, the preliminary service. We're going to pause for just a minute before we begin Shacharit to recite the formula of Bior Chametz. In a year like this one, where Pesach starts on Motzei Shabbat, on Saturday night, the rituals leading up to Pesach get pushed back. You wouldn't search for chametz on Friday night, and you wouldn't burn chametz on Shabbat morning. So we searched for chametz on Thursday evening. We burned or flushed the chametz on Friday morning. But we have until this morning to finish eating any chametz that we may have left for ourselves. We kept a challah out. We ate challah last night for Shabbat dinner, swept up the crumbs, and that was the last of our chametz. But this morning, we still recite until 11 a.m. this morning. We still recite the formula of saying that we get rid of all chametz that's in our possession, and if I have seen it or if I haven't seen it, I'll recite it. And so this is the only part of the preparation, the pre-Pesach rituals that happen on Shabbat. We've already gotten rid of everything, but today, now we declare. So I'm going to read out of the Haggadah, the Aramaic, and then the English, and then the Hebrew and the English. Kol chamira vechamia deika birshuti, dechamite udala chamite, deva'arite udala va'arite, livtil veleheve hefker ka'afra da'ara. All chametz in my possession, whether I have seen it or not, whether I have removed it or not, is hereby nullified and ownerless as the dust of the earth. Yehi ratzon milfanecha, Adonai Elohai ve'Elohei avotai. Shekashem sha'ani meva'eret chametz mibeiti umirshuti, ken ezke leva'er et yetzer hara milibi, v'chein tiva'er et kol harisha min haaretz. Adonai, our God and God of our ancestors, just as I have removed all chametz from my home and from my ownership, so may I evict the evil inclination from my heart, and may you dislodge the evil from all the earth. Amen. We'll continue with Shacharit, beginning with Shochen Ad on the 6th line of 147. Shochen Ad marom v'kadosh shemo v'chatuv rananu banim v'aleshem nevanim b'fi yesharim tithalal uvdivrei tzadikim titbarach uvilshon chasidim titromam uvkerev kedoshim Tit kadash uvmakalot rivavot amecha beit Yisrael berinayid parshim chamakein machal dorvaner shekein chovat kol hayitzurim lefanecha Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avoteinu lahodot lahalel lishabeach lefaer leromem lahader levarech laaleh ulkalas al kol divrei Shirot v'tishbachot David ben Yishai Avdecha Meshichecha. We rise 148. Yishtabach Shimcha La'ad Malkeinu El Melchunu Baruch Shemashmaret Kilachanel Shishma Berachot v'hodaot me'ata v'ad olam Baruch Ata Adonai El melech gadol batishbachot, El hahodaot, Adon haniflaot, Habocher v'shirei zimra, Melech el chei haolamim. You can be seated. We'll continue at the top of 150. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Yotzer or uvorei choshech, Oseh shalom uvorei et hakol. Hakol yoducha v'hakol yeshabechucha v'hakol yomru ein kadosh k'Adonai hakol yeromu muchasel yotzer hakol hayla v'dei chol yom da'atot sharei mizrach v'kecha me'rokim oticha ma'am mimekom alvana mimachon shivta u'me'ir la'olam kulo l'isham shebarabbi dabrachmim hameir la'atzman hameir In kerkecha ve'en zulatecha efes piotecha umido melach. In kerkecha Adonai Eloheinu ba'olam hazeh. Ve'en zulatcha malkeinu lechaye ha'olam haba. Efes piotecha go'aleinu limot ha'mashiach. Ve'en do melech ha'moshienu litchiat ha'metim. El Adon HaKol HaMasim Baruch Umvorach Befikol Neshama Godlo V'tuvo Malei Olam Da'at Utvuna Sovev Imoto Hamit Gael Chayot HaKodesh V'nedar Bechavod Ala Merkava Zechut Umishor Lifnei Chiso Chesed v'rachamim lifnei chevodam Tovim me'orot shebara Eloheinu yitzaram בדעת בבינה ובהשכל כוח וגבורה נתן בהן להיות מושלים בקרב תבל. מלאים זיו ומפיקים נוגה נעזים בכל העולם שמחים בצאתם וששים בבואם עושים ביים הרצון קונם פאר וכבוד נותנים לשמותו לברינה לזכר מלכותו קרא לשמש ויסרח אורה והתקין צורת הלבנה שבח נותנים לו כל צבא מרום תפארת וגדולה שרפים ואופנים וחיות הקודש לאל אשר שבת מכל המעשים ביום השביעי התעלה וישב על כיסא כבודו דוד. תתברך מושיענו על שבח מעשה ידיך ועל מאורי אור שעשית יפארוך סלע. 153. תתברך צורנו מלכנו וגואלנו בורא קדושים משבח שמך למלכנו. כולם אהובים, כולם ברורים, כולם גיבורים וכולם עושים באימה וביראה רצון קונם וכולם פותחים את פיהם בקדושה ובטהרה בשירה ובזמרה ומברכים ומשבחים ומפארים ומעריצים ומקדישים וממליכים את שם האל המלך הגדול הגיבור והנורא הקדוש הוא. וכולם מקבלים עליהם ומלכות שמיים זה מזה ונותנים רשות זה לזה להקדיש ליוצרם בנחת רוח בשפה ורוח ונימה קדושה כולם כאחד עונים ואומרים ביראה קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות מלוך כל הארץ כבודו. והאופנים וחיות הקודש ברעש גדול מתנשאים לעומת שרפים לעומתם משבחים ואומרים ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו לאל ברוך נעימו תיתנו למלך חי וקיים זמר ג'ונים. אור חדש על ציון תאיר ונזכה כולנו לאורו ברוך אתה אדוני יוצר המאורות אהבה רבה אהבתנו אדוני אלוהינו חמלה גדולה בדרך חמתנו. והביאנו לשלום מארבע כנפות הארץ ותוליכנו קוממיות לארצנו כי אל פועל ישועות אתה ובנו בחרת מכל עם ולשון וקרבתנו לשמך הגדול סלע סלע באמת להודות לך וליחדך באהבה ברוך אתה אדוני הבוחר במו ישראל באהבה אל מלך נאמן. שמע ישראל Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Amen. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha bechol levavecha uvechol nafshecha uvechol me'odecha ve'hayu hadevarim ha'ele asher anochi metzavecha hayom al levavecha ve'shinantam levanecha ve'dibarta bam Beshivtecha b'veitecha uvlechtecha avaderech uvshochbecha uvkumecha ukshartam leot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot bein einecha uktavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha v'hayim shamatrim. Ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzaiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem le'Elohim. Ani Adonai Elohechem emet ve'yatziv v'nachon v'kayam v'yashar v'ne'eman v'nachmim v'na'avanim Lador v'ador kayam u'shmo kayam v'chiso nachon u'malchuto v'emunato lad kayamen u'dvarav chayim v'kayamim. Emet shatahu Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu Malkeinu melech Avotenu Go'aleinu go'el Avotenu Yotzreinu tzor Yeshuatenu Podenu matilenu me'olam shemecha Ein Elohim zulatecha Ezrat Avotenu Atahu me'olam Again, Moshe. Tehilot le'leon baruchum varach Moshe u'Miriam u'vnei Yisrael l'chanu shira besimcha rabba v'yamiru chulam mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai mi kamocha nedar ba'kodesh nora tehilot osefele Shira chadasha shibechu geulim leshimcha al sifatayam yachad kulam hodu vehimlichu veyameru Adonai imloch leolam va'ed tzur Yisrael kuma be'ezrat Yisrael uftechinu mecha Yehuda ve'Yisrael Go aleinu Adonai tziva'ot shemo Kedosh Yisrael Baruch atah Adonai Ga'al Yisrael. We'll begin the first two brachot of the Amidah out loud together. After that, I'll encourage you, you'll skip the Kedusha and continue silently on your own. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor V'Hanora El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim V'Konei Hakol V'zocher chastei avot u'mevi goel livnei b'neihem למען שמו באהבה מלך עוזר ופוקד ומושיע ומגן ברוך אתה אדוני מגן אברהם ופוקד שרה אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני מחיי מתים אתה רב להושיע משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם מכלכל חיים בחסד מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים סומך נופלים ברופא חולים ומתיר אסורים ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומיתו מלך מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה ונאמן אתה להחיות מתים ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי המתים אתה קדוש ברוך אדוני הקדוש ישמח משה במנת חלקו כי אבן נאמן קראת לו כל הזמן Oh, say shalom, shalom bimromav. Oh, yaseh shalom. Oh, yaseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Vaimeru amen. We'll turn to our Torah reading for this morning, the Shabbat before Pesach. This week we read Parshat Tzav. In our Chumashim, it's on page 613. How about that? Page 613. If you are in another Chumash or Tanakh, we are in the book of Vayikra, in the book of Leviticus, the beginning of chapter 6. I'll invite you to join us. In just a moment, I'll start. The laning this week is called Shabbat HaGadol. The Shabbat before Pesach is always Shabbat HaGadol, the Great Shabbat. I'm going to chant a few lines from this morning's Haftarah, which is one of the reasons that this Shabbat is called the Great Shabbat. But for now, we'll be in our Torah reading. We're continuing with the descriptions of what will happen in the tabernacle, the sacrifices, the ritual of the priests. I'll read some about it and then I'll speak about it. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddeshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Vaydaber Adonai el Moshe lemor, tzav et Aaron ve'et banav lemor, zot Torah ha'olah, hi ha'olah, mokdah lemizbeach kol halayla ad haboker, ve'esh hamizbeach tukad bo, ve'lavash hakohen mido vad, u'michnasei vad, yilbash al b'saro, ve'herim et hadashen asher tochal ha'esh, al ha'olah al hamizbeach ve'samo etel hamizbeach, ufashat et begadav ve'lavash begadav acherim, ve'hotzi et hadashen el michutz lamachana el makom tahor, ve'ha'esh al hamizbeach tukad bo lo tichbeh, uvi'er aleha hakohen etzim baboker ve'arach aleha ha'olah ve'hiktir aleha chelvei ha'shalamim esh tamid tukad al mizbeach lo tichbeh. Adonai spoke to Moshe, saying, "Command Aaron and his sons thus, this is the ritual of the burnt offering. The burnt offering itself shall remain where it is, burned upon the altar all night until morning, while the fire on the altar is kept going on it. The priest shall dress in linen raiment, with linen breeches next to his body, and he shall take up the ashes to which the fire has reduced the burnt offering on the altar and place them beside the altar. He shall then take off his vestments and put on other vestments and carry the ashes outside the camp to a pure place. The fire on the altar shall be kept burning, not to go out. Every morning the priest shall feed wood to it, lay out the burnt offering on it, and turn into smoke the fat parts of the offering of well-being. A perpetual fire shall be kept burning on the altar, not to go out." I want to speak some about this piece, the beginning of the Parsha that I just read, but first think a little bit about Pesach. Pesach, and especially the Pesach Seder, is often a highlight of people's Jewish lives. When people think about their most impactful Jewish memories, Seders are often towards the top of the list. Many have memories of making charoset as a kid or finding the afikomen. And when I'm in conversation with people about their loved ones prior to a funeral, they often reflect on Jewish moments together, particularly Seder. There's no wonder that Passover is the most celebrated holiday by American Jews. People feel connected to the message of the holiday, and the rituals are deep and fun and iconic. And for many of us, there's a main focal point of our Jewish lives at Pesach. It's an annual marker of our deep connection. Some people find meaning in adhering to a kosher for Passover practice when kashrut might not be part of their Jewish observance the rest of the year. And for some, they might not do Jewish many other times of the year, but for Pesach, they are deeply connected. This is a beautiful thing that our tradition offers. And in this week's Parsha, in the context of the rituals of the Mishkan, the portable tabernacle, and the service of the high priest, we see a foil to this paradigm. One of God's suggestions is not an occasional or circumstantial occurrence, but an enduring constant, a permanent flame. Eish tamid tukad al hamizbeach lo tichbe. A perpetual fire is to be kept blazing on the altar. It is not to go out. The idea that the fire ought not to be extinguished is repeated 3 times within 5 verses. One of our commentators, Ibn Ezra, suggests that the repetition of this idea is meant to emphasize for us that really this flame is perpetual, hammers home the idea. Another commentator called Chizkuni, he takes it by saying that this fire isn't ever to go out, and that the emphasis of the 3 times is to indicate that even when the children of Israel are traveling, the flame will not be extinguished. But we have traveled a long way since God first sketched out a plan for ritual sacrifices in the wilderness. Empires rose and fell, temples were built and destroyed, and with the destruction of that second temple, the flame that was supposed to burn forever, the fire whose warmth was meant to reassure God that through the generations we would still be in this together, that we would be partners in holding God's metaphoric hands through God's loneliness, that Eish Tamid, that perpetual fire, was lost. Our religious evolution away from animal sacrifices has yielded many positives. Our prayer life is less hierarchical. We have more autonomy, and it is certainly less gory. And it is tempting to completely write off sacrifices as a staple of the past, not something that could ever be integrated into our modern sensibilities. Maybe God no longer needs the companionship of our fires or animal sacrifices and is content with the company of our words and our prayers and our actions. But what do we lose when daily ritual, like the Eish Tamid, stoking the perpetual fire, is missing from our lives? The notion of Tamid, perpetual, always, it sits in distinct contrast to the way that many of us approach our religious lives. We see our Jewish identities and our connection to ritual as things that punctuate our lives, as opposed to seeing them as the through lines, the thread that is constantly weaving through. Admittedly, the surface message of the Eish Tamid can be intimidating. It's one thing to go all out cleaning and koshering your kitchen for Passover, which is such a vibrant and tradition-steeped holiday. But to think about infusing our daily lives, day in and day out, with ritual, that can be intimidating. But the framework of the Eish Tamid also highlights an essential reminder that ritual, like life, is not a zero-sum game. If we rush full steam ahead, our engines, our fires, can burn out. The Parsha describes one Kohen, one priest, carefully dressing to protect the priestly vestments from getting covered in ash, keeping the Eish Tamid burning through the night and all through the day. Except we know that's not possible. One person can't do that work alone. No person could, day in and day out, night after night, tend to the fire. And so, there was a rotation of priests who cultivated this fire, chopping wood, collecting kindling, fanning the flames. It was such a sought-after task that the rabbis described the establishment of a lottery system to determine who would be the priests to perform these rituals. And while there were some days where priests woke up and enthusiastically entered this lottery, I imagine there were also days where it was hard for them to get out of bed, or they just didn't want to do the work of tending to the daily practice. Or days when they were more interested in interacting with the people who visited the temple during the festivals than they were in the more monotonous labor of the behind-the-scenes work. Fortunately, they were part of a collective, part of a large number of priests who were able to step in and share the responsibility so that the Eish Tamid, the perpetual fire, stayed lit. The Eish Tamid then became a vehicle to cultivate two awarenesses for the priests. The awareness of an ongoing commitment to maintaining a consistent ritual and a relationship with God, and two, the consciousness of their ability to depend on others and be depended upon in order to keep their community and their responsibilities going. In the first mention of the eternal flame, the Torah explains Ve'esh hamizbeach tukad bo, literally, while the fire on the altar is kept going on it, bo. That last word, bo, that word is interpreted by the Sfat Emet to mean that the fire was kept burning inside of him, inside of the individual priest. Without the temple, without the sacrificial system that is outlined in this entire book of Vayikra, of Leviticus, we have stepped into the role of priest. We are the ones responsible for fueling that perpetual fire, the Eish Tamid, both internally and externally. This month of Nisan, this month of Pesach, is biblically considered the first month of the year. And we can take this opportunity then to take stock of our spiritual lives and wondering, how am I nurturing the Eish Tamid, the perpetual fire? What does it mean for us to cultivate a sense of Tamid, of always, of perpetual into our lives? What are the regular rituals and practices you can engage in to nourish your spirit and to foster your relationship with God? How are you contributing to the health of our community so that when someone else needs to step back, you are in a role to step forward, and that you know that someone will step forward for you when it's time? This Pesach, as we use the holiday beginning tonight as an opportunity to punctuate our Jewish lives, perhaps we can also think about, in the context of an embracing and loving community, how we also cultivate the through lines, the thread that weaves our lives together. Kain Yehi Ratzon. I want to offer a Misha Berach for Cholim, a prayer for all who are ill. I'll invite you, of course, to include names of those that you'd like to daven for when I pause. Misha Berach Avotenu Avraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov ve'imotenu Sarah Rivka Rachel v'Leah v'yivarech v'yirapeh tacholim et. Daphna Ashkenazi, Ami Ashkenazi, Tala Ashkenazi, Eileen, Carol Battleman, Helen Beavers, Ricky Beavers, Janice Berlin, Brody Brayman, Aaron Bressinger, Donna Brigham, Beverly Cassius, Sandy Catania, Jill Cohen, Nathan Cohen, Deborah Elbert, Tom Gadberry, Mimi Grossman, Joe Hetzel, Marvin Jacobson, Austin Cabot, Dan Lawrence, Aaron Linkove, Robert Lipson, Michelle Mann, Mark Mathias, Gary Murray, Alan Nadell, Marsha Nutowich, Santa Panton, Glenn Rainbow, Emily Schauman, Darlene Shevsky, Lisa Shipowitz, Bud Skarupa, Susan Stein, Pat Stevens, Tom Stevens, Rachel Siegel-Strauss, Edna Wiener, Sarah Whaley, Rita Witt, Rodney Wolf, Debbie Yingst, Chavat Zero, Bat Esther, Malka Bat Yisrael, Vidora Bela, Rechaman Ben Sora, Rechel Sarah Bat Leah, Yaakov David Ben Zavor, Yisrael Eliyahu Ben Leah. Hakadosh Baruch Hu Yimale Rachamim Alehem Lahachzikam Urabotam V'yishlach Lehem Meira Refuah Shlema Min HaShamayim Refuat HaNefesh Urfuat HaGuf Betoch Shar HaCholim V'chazek Et Yidei HaOskim B'tzorchayhem Shabbat Himili Zok Urfuat Krova Lavo Hashta Bagalav Isman Kariv V'nomar Amen. Elna refana lanu, Elna refana lanu, Elna refana lanu, refuah shelema. I want to chant a few verses from this morning's Haftarah, the Haftarah that's special for Shabbat Hagadol, the Shabbat just before Pesach. Of course, it begins tonight. We don't have much time to internalize this message, though it's a beautiful one. If you want to join me, I'm in our Chumash. I'm going to chant the last couple of verses, beginning with verse 19 on 1297 in our Chumashim. Kinei hayom ba'bo'er katanur Vayu kol zeidim v'chol oser ishakash v'lihatotam hayom haba amar Adonai tzevaot asher lo ya'azov lahem shoresh ve'anaf v'zarka lachem yirei shemi shemesh tzedakah Umarpeh b'knafeha v'itzatem ufishtem ke'eglei marbek v'asotem reshaim ki hu efer tachat kapot raglechem bayom asher ani oseh amar Adonai tzevaot Zechro Torat Moshe Avdi Asher Tiviti Oto Bechorev Al Kol Yisrael Chukim Umishpatim Hine Anochi Sholeach Lachem Et Eliyahu Hanavi Lifnei Bo Yom Adonai Hagadol v'hanora V'heshiv lev avot al banim V'lev banim al avotam Pen avo v'hiketi et haaretz cherem Hine anochi sholeach lachem Et Eliyahu hanavi Lifnei bo Yom Adonai Hagadol v'hanora. The last few verses of this Haftarah describe that Eliyahu Hanavi, the prophet Elijah, will be sent to us on that great day, Bo Yom Adonai Hagadol v'hanora, on that day of God that is great and awesome. Elijah the prophet is said to be the one that will announce the coming of the Messiah, the coming of a greater time. We open the door of our homes to welcome Elijah during our Seder, believing that there is the possibility in redemption, that we believe in the promise of redemption. And so this Shabbat, the Shabbat just before Pesach, when we have Elijah on our minds, where we have a seat for him at the table and a cup for him to drink from, we open the door and we welcome him. And we declare the Shabbat before that it is possible that Eliyahu Hanavi will come, will be a part of our world, which is really an expression of hope and a belief that it is possible for things to be better than they are today. And so it is a great day, our tradition says, when Eliyahu Hanavi will arrive, when we will be able to welcome the prophet that announces that there will be a better time. And that's what this Shabbat is about. Shabbat Hagadol, that great day when Elijah will come, and a Shabbat Hagadol, a great Shabbat of hope, of belief, and of the possibility of redemption. Ki mitzion tetzei Torah, udvar Hashem Yerushalayim. 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 We'll continue as we near the end of our service this morning on page 204 for Ein Keloheinu. Levi, you want to join me for Ein Keloheinu? Wherever you are, he's coming. Page 204. Ein Keloheinu, Ein Kadonenu, Ein Kemalkeinu, Ein Kemoshienu, Micheloheinu, Michadonenu, Michemalkeinu, Michemoshienu, Nodel Eloheinu, Nodel Adonenu, Nodel Malkeinu, Nodel Moshienu, Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu, Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshienu, Atahu Sheiktiru, Avotenu, Lefanecha Ketoret Hasamim. Yanai na 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 na, yanai yanai, yanai na 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 na, yanai na na na, yanai na 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 na, yanai yanai, yanai na 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 na, yanai yanai yanai. We turn to Aleinu, page 205. You want to come join me for Aleinu? Yeah. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol. Latet gedula leotzer breshit shelo asanu kigoye haratzot velo samanu kemishpachot adama shelo sam chalkeinu kahem vegoraleinu kechol hamonam va'anachnu korim umishtachavim umodim lifnei melech malchei hamalachim Hakadosh Baruch Hu, Shehu Noteh Shamayim ve'yoser haaretz, u'moshav yikara b'shamayim imal, u'shchinatu zo begovei meromim, Hu Eloheinu ein od, emet malkeinu efes ulato, kakatuv b'torato, Vedata yom v'hashevota el levavecha ki Adonai hu Elohim b'shamayim imal ve'al haaretz mitachat ein od. Kakatuv b'toratecha Adonai imloch le'olam va'ed v'namar ve'ayah Adonai le'melech al kol haaretz bayom ha'hu hi Adonai echad u'shemo echad. You can be seated. In the coming week, we honor the yard sites of the following: Nellie Schwartz, Carl Diamond, Saul Kaplan, Fanny Scheinberg, Jacob Shankup, Henrietta Bauman-Nickel, Pauline Litsky, Etta Levine, Abraham Schley, Herbert Halpern, Folly Marcus, Dorothy Geller, Morton Gladstein, Philip Karb, Robert Miller, and Joseph Carter Jr. All those who are in mourning or observing a yahrzeit, I invite you to join me in our modified Mourner's Kaddish, page 207. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah be'alma divra kirute ve'amlech malchute b'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael ba'agala uvizman kariv v'imru amen. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudsha brichu La'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tush b'chata v'nechemata da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'imramav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Shabbat shalom. Thank you for joining me this morning. Shabbat shalom. We have some birthdays. We say happy birthday. Happy birthday. Not Gio's birthday. It's not Carrie's birthday either. It was Carrie's birthday last week. That's right. Happy birthday this coming week to Judy Felsenthal, to Janice Berlin, Sheila Greenberg, to Olivia and Avery Solari. Happy birthday to y'all. To Elise Jordan, to Joey Nodowich this coming week, Barry Shulkin, Marjorie Haas, David Rifkin-Lerner, and Shoshana Rifkin-Lerner are turning 7. Happy birthday to y'all. And this coming week, anniversaries to Steve Abramowitz and Michelle Morgan, and to Susan and Fred Levko. Happy anniversary to y'all. Seders, of course, are tonight and tomorrow night. On Wednesday evening, we'll be having a few exciting things in person and online. 5:30, we'll be joining in Shelby Farms for a picnic. We'll get to Adonolam in a minute. And in the park, bring your Pesach dinner, 5:30, I believe, in the park. You can see in our emails and online where exactly that will be. It's near the Visitor Center. We have a pavilion rented out. And then at 7:30 that evening, so once you're already back home, the park is closed then, we'll be having a fascinating lecture from Peter Brand about ancient Egypt, obviously in time for Passover. So hope that you'll join us for both of those, the picnic and the lecture. Any other announcements, Gio? On Thursday evening, you can join Gio on Zoom for a session on leaving your personal Egypt. Is that right? You can find more information in our Pesach email that went out earlier this week. All right. Should we sing Adon Olam?
Yeah.
Okay. Page 211, Adon Olam. Adon Olam asher malach b'terem kol yatzir nivra li'et nasa b'chefto kol azai melech shemo nikra azai melech shemo nikra ve'acharei kichlot hakol levado yimloch nora ve'hu haya ve'hu hove ve'hu yiyah betif ve'hu yiyah betifara ve'hu echad ve'yen sheni laham shilom lehachbira beli reishi beli tachlit velo ha'oz mehamisra velo ha'oz mehamisra vehu eli vechai goali vetzor chevli beyetzara vehu nisi umanosli Menakosi beyom ekra. Menakosi beyom ekra. Beyado avkid ruchi be'et ishan ve'ya'ira ve'im ruchi geviati Adonai li ve'lo ira Adonai li ve'lo ira. Shabbat Shalom. Yeah, Ima Sidor. You say Shabbat Shalom?
Shalom.
Do you want to sing a Pesach song?
Yeah.
What do we sing for Pesach?
Hello.
Dai Dayenu. Can you sing it?
Hello.
Dai Dayenu. Dai Dayenu. Do you sing another song for Pesach?
Yeah.
What song? Do you sing about the frogs?
Yeah.
How's it go?
Frog. Here.
Frogs here. Frogs.
Yeah.
Frogs are jumping.
Yeah.
Lovey, what are you gonna eat for karpas today?
Massa.
I'm pissed. Matzah.
Matzah.
And what's karpas?
And you're going to eat charoset? Yeah. All right. Say Shabbat Shalom to everyone. Shabbat Shalom, Gio. Say bye-bye to the people on the camera. Say bye to the camera. Bye-bye, camera. Yeah, Gio went in there. All right. Shabbat Shalom. He'll be back.